Hey, how's it going, everyone? I'm Nathan with the ebookreader.com. For this video, I'm going to give you guys an in-depth review of the Poke2 color from Onyx. This is one of the first e-readers to use e-ink's new color screen technology, and it's pretty cool. So let's take a look here. The Poke2 color, it's a very lightweight, small device. It's actually probably the smallest 6-inch e-reader I've ever reviewed. It's got kind of a basic design. You just got like a plastic exterior here. It's got a little bit of a soft coating to it. They got the old school micro USB port on this model. I don't know why they aren't using USB-C like they are on their larger models, but it's definitely nice. As you can see, color screen, having your content on here, and then the back of the device, it's just got the smooth, slightly rubbery coating to it. So it's a very thin and lightweight device. Like I said, it feels a lot smaller than the Kindle Paperwhite when you have them like both in your hand. Even though they have the same screen size, it definitely feels a lot smaller. And again, definitely nice to have the color screen over the black and white screen for your covers and your color content. Here's just sort of like another look at the size difference. Even though they have, 6-inch screen, there's a big difference in just the size of the two devices. It's very portable that way, so definitely an advantage. And again, who doesn't want a color screen, color covers, and color content like that? It looks pretty nice. But as I showed in the color ink review video, it doesn't come without some downsides. So here it is compared to the Kindle Paperwhite, just when you're using text mode. So it's nice having color, but it's a slight downgrade when you're using regular, when you're reading regular text, because of the color filter layer. It kind of makes the screen darker on the Onyx. And then it also, it just has this little bit of you can see the little bit of a filter of the grid over the screen. So the text isn't quite as clear, even though it does render text at 300 PPI, which is the same, as the Kindle. And then color gets rendered at 100 PPI because it has that filter over the top. So that's the one main downside with the color screens, is they just have a little bit less contrast for the black and white text. But I mean, it's still perfectly readable. You do still, it's kind of cool having the colored highlights. This is the Kindle app on the Onyx. Here's a closer look at the screen. You can see a little bit more what I'm talking about here. So it's just like a nice solid background on the Paperwhite, whereas the white background on here, you can see like the pixels a little bit more with the color as well. You can see how the lower resolution affects that a little bit and just takes away a little bit from the text clarity. But, it's still, like I said, still readable, still usable. It just sort of kind of depends on your own personal preference here. So let's just switch over and talk more about the Onyx's interface right now. So they've got a different interface on this slightly than they do on their larger models. You still got the Android 9.0 operating system. You got your quick options up here. You got back, home, and then you got your, you can switch between different apps. And then you've got your different quick settings up here as well. You can also customize that a bit, change it up how you, if you want to have some different settings available. So they got two different home screen layouts on the 6-inch models, which I find odd. The larger models don't have this view, this O-Reader view. They just have this view, the Onyx library view. So I was a little bit surprised that it has a different setup than their larger models. But yeah, you got two different options for their library view, and then their built-in ebook apps. You got a couple of different options for their built-in apps. You can sideload apps like Moonreader. I sideloaded that on here, so a lot of people like that app, I know. So you can sideload apps in here, use your built-in apps. So you got a lot of options as far as ebook content, and you can pretty much read any kind of content on a device like this. And you got your app drawer, so you can install apps. It does support Google Play. I never like bothering with Google on these ink devices because they do have their own app store built in. Some of these apps on here are from their app store. So you can just go in here, download ebook apps from here. They got news apps and study and tool apps as well. They actually have a pretty decent selection in here as far as reading based apps. So you don't really need to use Google Play if you don't want to. I just don't like messing with it personally. It's kind of a hassle. So down here in the right corner, we've got the navigation ball. So this is a feature that wasn't enabled by default, but it is one of their settings. I was really confused with this device at first because it doesn't have a dedicated back button like Onyx's larger models. It does make it harder to navigate, but you can use this quick settings option down here. You can use it to adjust the front light level. You can set different apps on here. It's totally customizable. You can take screenshots, refresh the screen with it. So it's pretty much mandatory to use this little navigation ball in the corner here, or it makes it very difficult to navigate the interface. One of the other things it's very useful for is using it to customize an app setting. So Onyx has these optimized settings to make third-party apps work a little bit better. on the e-ink screen since they're not designed for e-ink. You can also optimize from the app drawer here. You can hold down an app and you can get your manage and optimize settings from there as well. But I find it works best to have that set on your nav bar here, because then you can actually see what the settings are taking effect in the app as you're using it. So it helps to have that option. You have the contrast to darken the font, but when you darken the contrast like on the Kindle app like this, it does affect the images as well. So you kind of got to mess with it a little bit to get kind of a happy medium so it doesn't affect the contrast of the images a whole lot while still making the text darker. So here's just a look at a comic, a typical comic on here. 6-inch screen obviously isn't ideal for this type of content. It is kind of weird that their first devices using these new color screens are 6 inches, but I mean, you can switch it over to landscape mode. It is usable either way you want to go about it here, but it does really look good with the color content. I mean, it's still not going to be as vibrant as like an LCD tablet or anything like that, but if you know how e-ink screens work, it's pretty cool how they managed to get this color content the way it is. And again, with the app optimization settings, you do have the option to customize the refresh frequency. It does help with color e-ink to have the refresh set every page, because you get a lot more ghosting. It's a lot more obvious. But you can set it if you wanted to like scroll faster or something like that. They have all these different refresh modes with the Onyx software. It's definitely a lot more advanced than your typical e-reader. So this is the Kindle app. You also have the panel view. If you want to double tap in the center of the screen, it'll take you to panel view, which kind of works pretty well on the smaller 6-inch screen here. And it is fairly responsive. Every once in a while, tap the screen and it doesn't respond with this app, but I mean, it does work fairly well. You can navigate the Kindle store with no problem whatsoever. It's kind of nice having the the colored images. You don't usually have that on an ebook reader, so you do have a little bit better look here with that. Again, the text being a little bit more fuzzy than the regular device, but still perfectly readable. It's just nice having the added color content. Web browsers work pretty well on Onyx's devices. It's set to their website by default with some questions and stuff here, but you can set up a different homepage if you want. As far as e-ink browsers go, Onyx's probably is the best. Again, though, I mean, it's an e-ink screen, so you got to have realistic expectations of how the web browser is going to work. But I mean, it is nice having the addition of the color content on here. Their web browser does automatically bold the text though sometimes, so if the text is blue, it might change it to black. But as you can see, images do render pretty nice on here. I mean, it is lower resolution, but it's still is effective, and it's definitely a step up from having everything in black and white. So I think the color screen is pretty cool myself. Obviously, it's not perfect, but it does come with some drawbacks with the black and white contrast being a little less and the screen being darker. But I mean, it is cool having these different colored images and different colored apps you can run on here. So this is just one of the apps I downloaded from their app store just to test how news apps work. Personally, I'd never used this, but it complains about Google Play not being enabled, but it still works anyway. So, I mean, you can read the articles this way. You got the image at top. So, I mean, you can also, use the usual stuff as if you were using a tablet, activate hyperlinks. Overall performance is pretty respectable for an e-ink device. This device does have a 2 gigahertz octa-core processor, 2 gigabytes of RAM, 32 gigabytes of storage space. So you got a lot of options here. You can read PDFs on here for some colored content as well, but 6-inch screen, I really don't know why you'd read PDFs on this device, so I'm not really going to go into much detail with that. But let's go ahead and open up the default reader app, which is All Reader, which is odd because Onyx's larger devices only have the Onyx reader, so I was a little bit confused when I first used this app. I couldn't figure out how to exit it because the top menu doesn't open. It turns out you got to use the very bottom icon on that menu there. But here's something I should have mentioned earlier. When you use the black and white mode with the black background, you really can't see the grid on the screen hardly at all when you're using it like this. So if you like reading like this, it's kind of a good way to work with the color screen technology because you can't really see that grid as good with the background. You can see a little bit on the white text, but it does provide a little bit better reading experience when you have the inverted mode like this than it does in the regular mode, just with the added layer over the screen. So you can also open it up with Onyx's app if you'd rather use Onyx's Neo Reader app. So you got a couple of different options with the built-in software. I'm more familiar with this app because that's what it is, what they use on their larger devices. It's got some more advanced features, like you do have text-to-speech with this app. So this device, it doesn't have a speaker though, and it doesn't have headphone jack. So you got to use Bluetooth speakers or Bluetooth headphones if you wanted to set it up for that. But yeah, it doesn't have any way to listen to the text-to-speech. by default. So you can load up a number of third-party apps. I was trying the Libby app. I just want to kind of see what magazines look like on here. So I was just trying out this sample. I'll show you guys how it works. So again, 6-inch screen, not ideal for this type of content, but I mean, you can still get by with it a little bit here. So again, with the color screen, you do need to have the refresh, and it's one of those things you can set with the app optimization, set to every page. Like this one, I have it set for 2 pages because it's just kind of where it fell, and you can see a lot more ghosting in the background. The color's not as pure as it could be. So yeah, it really does help to go into settings and optimize it to have refresh every page for content with color on the screen here. But I mean, it does look pretty good. Obviously, you can tell with the M&Ms there, they're not like as bright as they would be on a tablet. Color's not as accurate. They got 4,096 colors supported with this e-ink screen. So I mean, overall, the color ink is pretty cool, but it does have some compromises you just have to accept with the technology where it currently stands. But I mean, a device like this definitely is, it's the most innovative thing we've seen out of e-ink pretty much ever. So it's kind of cool to see something different on an ebook reader than your typical ink Carta screens. So one odd thing to note, Onyx didn't add a warm front light to this device, even though it costs $300 and it's just like a basic design with no page buttons, no waterproofing. You think they could have at least added a warm front light, but they did not. But I mean, this is just kind of an experimental device at this point, but I still think the color e-ink is pretty cool. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this video right here. Check out the ebookreader.com for more details. Thank you guys for watching. Bye.